here. Okay, so Shopify, list. So start with like I guess just like areas, like focus areas, I guess. So one of them you listed was Shopify App Store, right? And then one of them is online store KPIs. Okay, so this is like more like merchant experience technically. So
Yeah,
very high level. And then maybe you can do something like merchant customer experience. Let's just say there's these three areas, right?
yeah.
So under merchant experience, it's like
Shopping experience mainly, I guess.
yeah, so like this is where I'm like, look at the opportunities, and this is where you do the help my ways. So help my way something, right?
Design. So above, I said how my way design a verify process like under opportunities.
Uh
Just at the very bottom, there is a how my way section.
oh
I
yeah.
wrote how
But
my way design a very. I don't know if that's something we can
uh
say about the customer
so
experience.
yeah, I'll teach how to frame this a little bit better. I would recommend doing it in this format because you can kind of see the hierarchy and you can see
Yeah,
like, where they're grouped under. Whereas like this, when you do things in a generic list, that's like doesn't have the hierarchical
that's
structure.
true.
You don't know like what degree of granularity or detail a thing is
Hmm.
in, right? So in terms of like help my ways, you can think about like what are the problems and opportunities. And generally, like all of these should be centered around either revenue or growth. Like in some way, like whatever help my way stay is like if we solve this problem, it should directly or even indirectly influence growth or revenue in some way. Okay.
Right.
So merchant experience, we already know like a lot of issues like how might we um, help merchants better understand their analytics and make
Oh
the
yeah,
necessary improvements,
that's
right?
probably a big area.
So uh, the test I do when I type out a help my way is like, okay, if we solve this problem, does it somehow increase either revenue or growth?
Yeah,
It does, right? Because like based off the business model, I think Shopify maybe takes a cut on every transaction, but even if they don't, people that perform better, um, merchants that perform better will tend to stay on Shopify's platform longer.
exactly.
The
Yeah.
lifetime value would increase, right? So
Hmm.
under every help my week, like what are the metrics? So there's a lifetime value. There's transaction volume, merchant revenue.
Revenue.
So you can even do something like this where it's like revenue. These are the factors. And then for growth, let's see, list.
Uh, let me maybe I can help you in this way. So you can turn this revenue thing into a toggle.
Oh, yes,
Oh,
yes, yes.
and then you can put revenue here. Underneath, you drag these three dots in there. So now they're all under one
I
revenue.
see. Yeah, you're better at Notion than I am.
They
Uh,
use it too much.
revenue and then growth. So like, how might these things improve growth? So a good example is, oops, list. Word of mouth and a net promoter score NPS. This is how I'd frame it, right?
Yeah, this feel like a PM
Well, basically,
analysis.
so this is just how one help might we. Let's kind of
Yeah.
keep going here. Um, can I duplicate this somehow? Okay, perfect. Um, just trying to make a template here. Probably like an old man using Notion right now too.
Why? Wait, how old are you actually are? Like
What,
28?
how old do you think I am?
You look very young to be honest. If you don't like you actually look like around my age, but since
Seriously?
I since I since I know like you graduated, you work for like at least like 6, 7 years now, right? So I would say you're around 28. You're
20
26?
26,
You
yeah.
graduated when did you graduate?
20,
22, right? Oh, you only worked for 4 years?
yeah.
What the hell? Okay. I would think you worked for like 6 years now. Wow.
I mean,
Okay.
it feels like definitely 6 years worth of work. I've
Yeah.
just worked over 40 hours every week since I
Yeah.
started.
That's true.
Okay, how
Wow,
might
that's
we help
crazy.
merchants better understand their analytics and make the necessary improvements? How might we, I guess, like help merchants um, set up their store and be um, easily set up their business idea before before training, something like that. Um, so these are all just like kind of like your ideas, right? And the way how my we has to be phrased is that it can't imply a solution. It has to be like an open question, if that makes sense. You can't say something like, how do we design a verification process? Because that implies a solution, right? Because you're kind of narrowing
Yeah.
your possibilities into like a verification process. Like, what is the actual like root goal or opportunity? Um, so the root goal would be technically it would be something like how might we reduce the volume, the quantity of reduce fraud, right? Fraud. And then the platform, e.g., misrepresented items, scams, etc. Platforms like that, right? So that would be that would technically be the help might we because you're not proposing a solution. You're only just saying like this is a problem. Shopify App Store again, like how oops, why is it not okay? Yeah, how might we help Shopify partners understand which like which apps
To build are the best ones, are the most,
to
I don't
build.
know.
Yeah.
But this is more like yeah,
Um,
business.
so don't worry about it yet. Just like, spend 5 minutes for each like focus area and then list out as many help my ways as you can.
Mm,
And then like I don't do the metrics yet. I do it last actually, but the order is like do write out the focus areas and then write
right.
out the help my ways and
Yeah.
then highlight the help my ways that you actually care about. So let's
Yeah.
say, this one seems interesting to you, and then this one seems interesting to you, and let's say this one also seems interesting to you. What is the next step? So after you find something that's interesting, then you come up with hypotheses, right? So hypothesis, I should do a toggle list here. Toggle list, oops, toggle list, hypotheses. And then the hypotheses, then you do something like if we add a product verification process, then um, we will reduce the amount of fraud because verified products will be accurately represented and of high quality, something like that. So the key here is that you need to have the if, you need to have the then, and then you'll have the because. So this is like the format I use
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
these. Then this is probably going to be the same for every hypothesis under this bullet point. But once you do the hypotheses, the next step is to do like the metrics, right? Um, so bullets. So in terms of metrics, again, it's like by revenue. Sorry, I'm like formatting this really badly. Revenue and
No,
growth.
no worries.
And then under revenue, you want to talk about like the all the indirect or proxy metrics that will either lead to revenue or more user growth. So for example, this would be like number of items returned by a customer, average
Okay.
rating score per merchant store, um, customer satisfaction score. Just throwing some of these out. And then maybe there's nothing for growth. It's fine. It doesn't have to be both,
Yeah.
either or. So I don't know if you can tell like this thing right here. This is how I would like articulate a single opportunity, right? Do
Yeah.
for everything. You don't have to, yeah, like don't spend too much time on this. Just do it for everything. Like what you want to do right now after you've done everything is to actually figure out what are you most interested in and what do you think your current skill sets give you a unfair advantage in terms of solving this.
Yeah. I actually, if you talk about, then I think the first Shopify App Store would be like the most interesting one for me, because first I am a developer. I build like, small side apps all the time, which I kind of understand the problem of, like when I try to find out opportunities, and it's hard. and and um and yeah, I guess like I would have more emphasis, and
Mhm.
how do you say that word? And did I say that right?
Besides,
Emphasize. It's like be able to like understand the problem, like emphasize,
oh,
right?
empathize.
Oh, emphasize. Okay, emphasize.
Empathize. So it's like
Emphasize.
the root word is empathy.
Empathy.
So
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. To emphasize with this problem.
Support. So yeah, so when you do the Helmut Wheeze, obviously you can do some research first from like the news articles, which you have done to give you ideas, or you can write the Helmut Wheeze first and then look up articles with these
To
keywords
verify.
to verify. Yeah, you can do it either direction. There's no hard and fast rule on how to do this, but once you flesh this out, you can even go a step further, right? And be like, toggle valuable skills. And then you can maybe like make a list here and be like, what skills would be really valuable beyond the big three for you to get really good at unlocking this problem space. So I don't know, like you can do about like contacts, like fraud, verification, auditing, or competitive audits, and using like PayPal,
Hmm.
Amazon, Stripe. You can do something like I don't know, like look into like some APIs for this. I don't even know
Yeah.
what it is, but
Yeah.
example. So here you can list out like here are all the
Yeah.
things that you need to like learn or do or
Right.
understand to do a really good job at solving this
Yeah.
hypothesis. Right?
Yeah.
So if you do this like over a longer period of time, oh sorry, before you do that, once you do this for a couple of your dream companies, then you can see like, all right, like what is the overlap, right? For example, I don't know if the other e-commerce platforms have an app store. So if you were to choose the app store, then maybe that limits
Right.
the scope of your niche, which
Right.
could be good or bad depending on what you want to do. But I promise you, like once you
The fraud.
once you craft a really good help my we come up with hypotheses that you validate through a case study and develop these skills, and then you can prove or at least articulate how you might be able to move either revenue or growth through these submetrics, and you can articulate that in an interview in a case study, I can promise you Shopify will hire you.
Yeah. That sounds like the process you're explaining,
Mhm.
I think if the designers at company do this, like this process, it's like basically really good for them to even like, just strategize their company and see what are the opportunities to
Like,
do it.
I would even argue that like if you did this and you applied specifically to be on Shopify's App Store team, like even as a more junior designer, you would have more impact than a senior designer because you have all the right contexts and the exact or like all the right skill sets to be
Yeah,
really good in Chrome space, right?
yeah,
For example, if you asked me to design for the App Store, I'd probably do a worse job than you.
yeah,
Um, because you have more context, you have these skills, and like you've thought about the space for so long. So like this could potentially be like one of your niches, right? It's like a starting point, and eventually you can expand outwards. So you start
right,
with the App Store, and then you start with I don't know, the merchant customer experience.
right. I
But you can expand to target like a wider domain over time. Oh, sorry.
I see.
So does this kind of make sense?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think it is very. I was really, I guess, stuck into the idea like this opportunity must be real. So I was kind of stuck in that on that, and I was like, look at their product and how it works, just to make sure that if I done a case study, it's not something they're gonna look at, be like, we don't even have this problem, like,
Like
right?
it
So
doesn't have to be like a perfect match too, right? Because you're trying to highlight transferable skills, if anything.
yeah,
And even if the company is already doing a good job in this space, like every company still wants to improve, right?
right.
So
Yeah, and that's the question. The question I was asking is like, how. So the question was, do I do this for each company I'm applying to have a specific personalized case study for them?
so you don't have to. Like it helps a lot if you do, but it's definitely
I
like
see.
not required. Like I would say like the more confident you are, the less required it is. But like you have to do a couple, right? Like and then make it like generalizable or applicable to them. So you
I
don't need
see.
to do a case study for like Shopify and Magento. You can just do for one or the other, but you have to make sure that they both have the same prompt space.
And I could be like, so this kind of solution could apply for both companies.
Exactly. Yeah. And well,
I
maybe you
see.
don't say like the solution will apply. Like there's gonna be bits and pieces that apply, but what you
I
want to
see.
say is like, because I've done this for Shopify, I know how it works. You and Magento have a lot of similarities, and I think like I would be able to do a really good job
I
at
see.
helping you um optimize your app store experience.
I see. Yeah, I was talking to the director of design at GitHub for like 30 minutes on Thursday morning, and basically he was trying to, I think, find out. Well, he said some things like, "Oh, your background in computer science and the designer, it really like makes the basically I kind of understood what you said about context and domain
Yes.
by just like he trying to find out what I can do or can provide as value. And yeah.
Yeah.
um so okay, so for the next step, I guess like come up with more help my way, and try to brainstorm about the metric scales, and then at the very end I pick the most interesting one and I just do a case study on that.
Yep. You can do a
I
case
see.
study on every hypothesis. Well, actually, it's up to you. You can do at the help my way level, or you can do at the hypothesis level. Depends on what skill
Hypothesis.
sets you want to demonstrate
I
and
see.
how deep you want to go. For example, if you
When
can
you
somehow,
say sorry.
for example, if you can like quickly validate like 5 hypotheses and then pick out the one that has the highest chance of succeeding, then you might want to start at the how might we level. If, for example, you only have one hypothesis, and maybe that hypothesis is like very, very interaction design heavy, and you want to demonstrate that skill in your portfolio, then you can maybe do at the hypothesis level.
Yeah. When you say 5 hypotheses, that's like 5 case study, or you're saying basically it's like 5 different screens and put together into one case study?
It could be either. It depends.
I see. Depends on how deep or detailed it could be.
Yeah.
I
For
see.
example, like some hypotheses can be tested or validated like proactively before you start designing. Like maybe you actually, I take that back. I think you should do your case studies at the how might we level
How might
and
we?
then show how you validate or invalidate or chose which hypothesis you want to focus on.
I see.
Yeah.
I
So
see.
there's like different validation techniques.
Okay.
Do you want me to go over some of them?
Uh, yeah, definitely. I was just kind of stuck in that help developer understand what app to build idea, and I would just like already
Yeah.
have the concept where it's like, I mean, I actually went through a lot of like customer reviews on Shopify's community blogs, and also when I was doing um uh Notion, I actually go on Reddit Notion every day, and
Mhm.
what I find most valuable is those people commenting and like just saying there's a lot of noise in those what they say, but I
Mhm.
think after you picking out like these things, and it's kind of like easy or to identify opportunities. And
Mhm.
I wonder if I could like design like this experience where it makes easy for them to find out opportunities. And I question, and also question on the other hand is like, is this
Mhm.
something that's valuable? Because it seems like every business, when they start uh when they try to build something, this is the phase they go through, right? It's natural. Do I like even like do something
Yeah,
small?
so I think like what you're doing is like you're falling into a trap that a lot of junior designers do. They get too fixated on one idea and then they rush to kind of like design it.
Yeah,
Whereas like somebody more senior, they take a step back, look at it more holistically and look at the whole scope. And then they basically try and rapidly validate and iterate on like many ideas before choosing like one or two or three to like focus on. And they have a
hmm,
very methodical approach on like criteria for like what passes a hypothesis and what doesn't pass a hypothesis. Like a hypothesis by nature has to be something that you can validate, right? So they
I
have
see.
a really good toolbox on validating these hypotheses.
I see.
Um,
Okay, yeah. Um,
for
that
example,
basically answered my question. I think, yeah, that's what I was like having
um,
struggle. It's like I have a
yeah,
solution, but do I like really want to have that? So
exactly. So for
yeah,
you, for example, right? If you didn't do this, like look at what you wrote up here, how might we, right?
yeah,
Like this really limits how good your case study and solution can be because
yeah,
no matter what you do, you're just the most you can do is have a really good verification process, right?
yeah. It's already solution there.
Yeah, the solution's already there, but like if you take a step back, you can be like, all right, like how do I actually help them? Or how do I help reduce fraud on the platform? Then it forces you to think about ideas that are outside of just verification. Like, what if there's just like better customer reviews, right? Like, what if you like increase
Yeah,
prominence of customer reviews? Would that achieve the same effect? What if you add like a policy to ban merchants from your platform after like a certain
yeah,
number of negative
yeah.
feedback? What if so like those are three different solutions, like very very different, right?
Right,
Don't know which one of those three is going to solve the problem the best.
right. I see.
But if you jump to just verification, then you lose out on these other two potential good ideas. It's kind of like I'm sure you're familiar with like graphing, but it's like a local maxima versus an absolute maximum. You want to
Yeah,
find absolute maximum solution.
that's true. I see. It makes sense. I remember reading a very popular article by Jay Joel, and he's just like, there's a graph comparing like senior designer and junior designer thinking,
Mhm.
and then the graph it's like a junior is like a line that's like very messy, but then
Yeah.
the junior it's like take this line. Oh no, come back. It's like,
Yeah.
so I think I understand what you're thinking, what you mean now. Sure, like I'd love to learn about like the validation process. Basically, it's like the line, right? You go to
Yeah.
one hypothesis, you kind of
Mhm.
validate and you go back until you find the maximum solution.
Yeah, and let's say for some reason you just wanted to specialize your niche in like validation, verification, and fraud prevention, then you can even like look outside of e-commerce and look at other companies that might be in different industries but all have some sort of fraud prevention or verification process. Then you
Yeah,
audit those experiences and create how might we use for how to improve parts of those experiences.
yeah,
For example, you can be like, how might we reduce the amount of time it takes to get verified? How might we improve the accuracy of verification? So you can see that there's like different ways you can like
yeah,
cut it in terms of like degree of scope.
yeah.
Um, so like you can like this is how you like find and develop a niche naturally.
Hmm.
Like the only caveat is that like if you want a lot of career stability, then you probably want to choose a niche that's reasonably like big enough
Yeah,
and valuable enough.
yeah,
I'm not saying that if you choose something super specific, you can't find a job, but then your options are more limited, right?
yeah.
There's also a misconception on what career stability is. A lot of people think career stability is like you just stay at a job for as long as you want and you don't get fired. That's not really real career stability. Like real career stability is like if you get fired, can you find a
Another
better
job.
or equivalent job within a week, right?
Yeah,
That's the kind of mindset that you need to cultivate.
yeah, I agree. Yeah, so yeah, you mentioned about like the validation process. Can you
Mhm.
go deep, like talk about that
Yeah,
more?
yeah. So there's generally like two forms of validation. There's proactive validation, which means like you validate before the product is built. And there's also reactive validation, which means like you validate after the product is built using like data. So proactive is usually more user research, and then reactive is more data driven. And generally, proactive is a lot cheaper and easier because you're catching the mistakes very early on before you invest a lot of time and resources into it. So it depends on what aspects of your hypothesis you want to validate. For example, if you want to validate that this hypothesis is actually like a big issue, then you can do something like a questionnaire or user interview. If you want to validate what the current behavior is, then maybe you want to do a diary study. If you want to validate whether or not people would use a particular solution, or if they would use a solution, or if they understand what your solution will do for them, then you want to do a concept test.
Right. I
If you
see.
want to validate how easy it is to use your solution, then you do a usability test. So it depends on what aspect of your hypothesis you want to validate. And generally, how you decide that is like, when you make decisions, it's based off assumptions, right? Like it doesn't make sense for you to validate everything. You need to think about what assumptions are the most critical for you to validate. And for me personally, what I look at is like, what is the risk if this assumption is wrong? Um, what else is the factor? If I go forward with this like assumption or decision, how easy is it to reverse it if it's wrong? I also look at how big of a deviation is this assumption? Like how much of a stretch is this assumption from like a very standard, well-known like pattern or yeah, well-known like pattern or interaction model or mental model? Like, is it a stretch or is it like a pretty safe assumption to make? Those are the three factors I look at when deciding what parts to validate and whether or not I should validate. And then all those tools, and there's probably a lot more too you can use to validate different parts of your hypothesis. When you do validation though, like it's user research usually, like for proactive, at least for designers. You have like the research question up front as well, like something very, very specific.
Yeah.
Do a test just because you think you need to do it. Have
Yeah.
a purpose.
So basically, if I were to go about, let's say we have one hypothesis here, verification process, I kind of need to do interviews or
Like,
um,
so like for verification process, like, like what assumptions do you have about the verification process? Like, why do you have this hypothesis? Like, why do you think it's going to solve fraud or reduce fraud?
I well, I just thought, first of all, it was inspired by the Pinterest program, and second, I think the verification process is basically like adding a trash badge to the stores and to make sure that they're not selling fake
So
product. It takes a lot
yeah,
of
that
human
makes sense.
resources though. Yeah.
So that's assumption one, right? How confident do you feel like adding a trust badge will reduce fraud? Let's say
It will depends on how companies verify the yeah. I mean,
so what you want to do at this point, let's say you're not sure about this assumption, right? Then you
right.
want to take a screenshot of like a merchant store and then just add like a verification badge markup in a couple different formats. And then you want to do a concept test with actual like consumers and customers and
Yeah.
then ask them like, maybe something like on a scale of 1 to 10, how much more are you likely to like trust this?
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
that would
I
be one example. That would be one example of a test to validate that specific assumption.
right. Yeah. Now I'm thinking, now the question you're asking me, now I'm thinking about it. I think the solution that was in my head, or the hypothesis, was
Mhm.
if Shopify takes the time to like check on the company's product and actually kind of like look into the detail, I'm sure they can kind of like verify if the product they're selling is
There's a second assumption. You're assuming that Shopify has enough like manpower.
exactly. And then now I
And
realize it's gonna take a lot of manpowers.
yeah, it's like, okay, you're assuming that there's a lot of manpower. Shopify has like 800,000 merchants. Is it even feasible for
To do
them
that, yeah. And it's
to,
not
so
really a design solution, I guess. Yeah.
like it's part of design, right? Design is problem solving, and that's what you're doing. I want to kind of like encourage you to be more of a holistic thinker, like think outside of the box and consider all the options.
Yeah.
That's what makes a really, really good senior designer, right?
Okay.
Like between me and you, like we would both design pretty much the same verification badge, I think, right? The difference is like, um, by the time we build it, I would probably be more confident because I validated the right things. And then like directionally, like I've considered all the factors I could go
Exactly.
wrong and like have like mitigations in place.
Yeah, where I probably had very small. Yeah, I think now the difference is I need to take the time to diverge more into different ideas or
Yeah.
hypotheses and kind of choose the best one. Okay, so the work for me now, I understand, is to come up with more hypotheses first, to like diverge it first, to not think too narrow. I think I was thinking very narrow.
I would do it at like different levels. So right now you're getting very deep on Shopify. And I think if I look at your plan here or your unique,
Company list.
you said
Oh,
that
unique things. Company
you're
list.
targeting e-commerce for now, right?
Yeah,
So I would look broadly at all the e-commerce companies on your list
yeah,
and then be like, all right, like what are the common like areas that overlap, right? Is the
yeah.
app store, does a concept of an app store exist across all these companies?
I
If it's
see.
only Shopify that has an app store, then it might not be the best thing to start on because it's so
Right.
narrow, it locks
It.
you to only Shopify.
Yeah.
But every single e-commerce store will have like a merchant experience and a customer experience, right?
I agree.
So you see that overlap, then you dig in deeper. What are the common problems that they have?
I agree. Yeah. I was also gonna show you like the